Oh, we're live. All right. Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here in our Planet Detroit webinar on composting or combusting. My name is Nina Ignazik, and I am the founder and editor of Planet Detroit, and I am so excited to have this rock star panel with me today in the composting world and the food waste world. So welcome everybody to our webinar recap of our food waste and climate reporting series, which was produced with support of the MIT Environmental Solutions Journalism Fellowship. Our 7 stories, which you can see there in the chat, were an exploration of our food waste problem here in Michigan and how it's fueling methane emissions, which drive climate change, and what communities, innovators, and public leaders can do to shift that system. And we've got some of those folks here with us today. So we've got lots of ways for you to engage on the different social media platforms that we're streaming to. Please post any questions that you have in the chat or the comments of the post where you're watching, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. And we will be getting to those questions later in the hour. But to begin, I'm going to just do a little overview of the reporting that we did that published last week in Planet Detroit. So again, thank you so much to our amazing panel that's here today. These are folks that are doing things that were really fun to report and write about. So a little bit about the scale of the problem. So in Michigan, we've got a big food waste problem. We landfill about 2 billion pounds of food annually. It's about enough to feed every family in Michigan. It's the most common material in the state's waste stream, and methane from food waste is a major climate pollutant. Michigan ranks 8th nationally for landfilled food waste. So we do have an issue. In Michigan, landfills are still the norm for most of our waste. Most of those landfills are privately owned. We did produce one story about a public landfill that's trying to do things differently, Kent County, which is trying to do alternatives to methane capture, do more waste to energy work, and they're trying to build a sustainability business park that would create opportunities for circular economy type businesses to reuse waste. But we're here today to talk a lot about reuse and composting. And a few things we know about composting is that it can cut that methane, it can improve our soil, and it can close that food loop. But only a fraction of composters across the state currently accept food scraps. So we're going to talk to a couple that do. Lots of barriers around this, rules, low landfill fees. It's easier to just throw stuff away, and a lack of public education. So we've got some folks that are changing that paradigm to talk with us today. We've also got really cool innovations that are happening. We've got Brittanie Dabney from EcoSphere Organics here today, who's going to talk about how they're working to turn food scraps into products that people can use. I didn't know banana peels could be potentially turned into a fabric that I could maybe use as a purse or a wallet someday. Other things like apps, Too Good to Go is a way to connect with restaurants that have extra food at the end of the day. Things like flash food, where you can get groceries that are closer to their expiration date at a deep discount at stores like Meijer, which I actually did, and I got so many potatoes, and they're fine, they're great. I've been making a lot of potato dishes at home. And then we've got Food Rescue. So Darraugh Collins is here from Food Rescue US, and they coordinate kind of the smaller scale food rescue issues when it comes to what's left over at Whole Foods or Starbucks at the end of the day that could actually go to a pantry. Obviously, we have other larger food rescue activities like Gleaners and Forgotten Harvest active in the state. So one of the things I really learned with my reporting was that there's just all of these different kind of scales that we need this work at. So what's next? What's missing in my reporting? I found that there's really a lack of statewide coordination around these issues. But the folks here today are really trying to work to change that. Not throwing things away is not an economic advantage for most people. It's harder to do things differently. And we have, kind of a fragmented infrastructure around this, and folks are really interested in how we can build more infrastructure to get to the point where these things are easier and affordable, to not waste so much food. And I think I mentioned that. All right. Sorry. All right. So, yes, please check out our full series on planetdetroit.org. And we will now dive into talking to our guests. So I'm going to start with Brittanie Dabney from EcoSphere Organics. And I'm going to change it to this view so we can see a little bit better. Hey, Brittanie, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Great. So, Brittanie, tell us a little bit about EcoSphere Organics. What inspired you to start the company, and what do you do there?
Yeah, so EcoSphere Organics was born out of a frustration with how much food waste ends up in landfill, but also how valuable food waste can be, and what it can be used for, but it's not being used for that. And we've talked to several companies that are doing, leather alternatives and fermentation. There's just green chemicals, but the issue is scaling the use of food waste and keeping a consistent feedstock and raw material supply. And so that's how EcoSphere Organics came about, really wanting to focus on the use of scaling food waste and by turning that into a raw material for downstream industries that are doing like manufacturing the green chemicals or the vegan leathers. We also have our own alternative materials. So like you mentioned, taking banana peels and then turning that into wallets. It could be pretty much a vegan leather that can be used for anything. And then other bioplastics, creating circular products like taking citrus waste from a restaurant, turning it into coasters for that restaurant, as well as we do fertilizers, and then, of course, pigments. So focusing more on the art world, creating sustainable pigments, which many of them now are made from harmful metals. So
Right.
really focusing on what's the different uses of food waste and how can we scale that. And then also the technologies in the industry, whether it's we have a software component for those companies supplying the food waste. We also develop a piece of equipment to help with on-site conversion of food waste to raw materials. And so we're really focused on the raw materials for industrial processes, but food waste that would normally be discarded, like the peels, things like that. So we try to focus on foods that aren't fit for human consumption.
Got it. What has been your experience trying to develop? I mean, you're largely in R&D mode, trying to identify things that are feasible and then moving into it. What kind of support have you received in this effort? From the state, from the city, and what would you say could be done better to maybe support these innovative ideas?
Yeah, right now at this stage, we've had like several conversations with those in the city, just about the business overall. I think some of the main challenges is just understanding that these up and coming solutions for food waste, especially those in the tech space, is not something that's going to happen overnight. And it does require investment,
Right.
of money in order to make these ideas happen and come to fruition. And there's not just ours, but just a lot of good ideas, from other founders here in Michigan that are trying to address the food waste issue. I think some of the ways that Michigan can support outside of just grant funding and things like that is space to pilot out ideas. So whether that's like a warehouse space or, having access to farmers that are willing to work with or willing to help try out some of these new ideas, just being able to do some real world piloting. So to take ideas out from a lab and actually put it in the real world and really find out how can we make, these sustainable solutions actually work for
Mm-hmm.
as many people as possible. So yeah, that would be the main thing. Also, I think Michigan is trying to work on this now, but like testing labs for the actual materials themselves.
Hmm.
So like companies that are, doing fertilizers, things like that can, have a lab that's affordable to test out all the materials, affordable production space, as well as just outcome based grants. So going back to the piloting,
Right. And,
that.
and you're working out of New Lab in Michigan, in the Michigan Central. How has that experience been in terms of the resources available, the connections? And I know you're looking to move out to a bigger space at this point.
Yeah, so yeah, we're still at New Lab, but we recently actually moved into another warehouse space. So New Lab will be our material production space where we do the composite, so creating the final product and then doing material testing. And then the warehouse space is where we'll be converting the food waste to the raw material. So yeah, to kind of help break up our operations and make it a little bit more efficient. But yeah, New Lab has been really great. So especially being early stage company, they were able to give us so many resources starting off, and that has allowed us to grow and kind of expand and use our resources wisely. And so being at New Lab, we have, of course, access to the shops. There's so many engineers, there's talent, and also being around other startup founders that can also assist and collaborate on different projects. So we've definitely had an amazing experience here at New Lab, and probably wouldn't have been able to move forward as fast as we have without being here.
Cool. All right. We're going to move on to our next panelist, who is Darraugh Collins, founder of Food Rescue US Michigan. There should be a Michigan on that slide. Darraugh, thanks so much for your time today. Tell us a little bit about what Food Rescue US is.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yes, so Food Rescue US, we are an app-based food rescue, and our model really focuses on a direct transfer system where our rescuers pick up from whether it's a restaurant or hotel or even an event, and they go directly to a receiving partner so that we're able to handle highly perishable food, get it out to the community right away. And we're able to be really nimble because we don't have a brick and mortar facility. We don't have a sorting facility type model. So we can really be anywhere in the state of Michigan as long as we have food donors that have surplus food, rescuers that are willing to join us, and of course, receiving partners that can help us get the food out to the community.
So tell us what this looks like in practice. Who are some of the donors? Who are the people that volunteer, and who gets the food? What does it look like?
So, we started it'll be 6 years ago in June that we started, and we started at the Foundation Hotel in Detroit. So we started, within the hospitality industry. So we have hotels, restaurants, certainly grocery stores like Plum Market, Whole Foods, Starbucks. We also do events like the Grand Prix, which is this weekend, and Rocket Mortgage Classic and other things like that. We rescue from those types of events because prepared food is a sweet spot for us because of our model. We're able to handle prepared food, which when I started this 6 years ago and I was talking to people, they were told that they couldn't donate prepared food. They could donate other things, but not that. So we really felt that was a huge opportunity, for us. Rescuers, our rescuers are amazing. We have, a lot of rescuers that have registered on our app. We have, I would say, at any one time, we have about 125 of them that are active because it really depends. Some people join us because they are in high school and they need volunteer hours. Maybe they need community service hours, or they are retired, or maybe they're a mom rescuing during the day, or someone that rescues on the weekends. We have amazing rescuers, and they are all ages. As I said, we love when our rescuers, bring their littles, which we call our mini rescuers, because we think it's important to introduce children to community service and really working hard to serve our communities. And we believe that if it starts when they're young, that's something that they'll carry with them, throughout their life. So we have, a wide range of ages and, people coming from all backgrounds all around, the area. And, we operate, from Wayne County as far west as Kalamazoo County right now. So, our rescuers are everywhere, and we couldn't do this without them. I couldn't do this without them. And our agency partners also are very diverse. It could be for example, a low-income senior apartment building, a senior center. It could be a street outreach team, a substance abuse program, mutual aid groups. It's really, as long as we know people are getting food out to the community and meeting a really important need and getting food to our most underserved people, then we are available to work with them. So that means that that could be something very traditional, or it could be something very grassroots, very hyper local.
Whenever I hear you talk about this, it just sort of like boggles my mind and scares me a little bit, the complexity that you're dealing with. I mean, you've got like these 3 different groups and you're trying to draw threads between them and keep everything organized. How do you do that?
Well, I couldn't do it without our app. Our Food Rescue US app is, the only reason that I could keep all 3 of those things going and connected. And so that's how we do it, is as I really put all this information in our app, and our rescuers go in there and they can scroll through and find, rescues that fit their schedule, and they can claim them. A great thing about that is they can also adopt those rescues. And I would say the majority of the rescues that we have on there are adopted, which means that person enjoys doing that rescue so much that they want to do that same rescue at that same time every week. And so a lot of our rescues are adopted. So that's a really great sign that people, are loving, what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And also our receiving partners and our food donors also have access to that part, their profile within the app. So they can either see what food is coming to them, or as a food donor, they can go in and input whenever they have food.
So can the receivers ask for food when they need it?
Yes, they can absolutely reach out. And that's something that, is really important to our model, is really building relationships and understanding our partners and what their capacity is, because we never want to overwhelm them. We never want to take them food that's too much for them, or a food type that isn't appropriate for them. So we always have this, we always ask for this very open line of communication with our receiving partners. Always let us know what you need, how we can better support you, and what we can do differently. If we need to come back and get food because we brought you too much, we're going to do that.
Cool. What would help you to grow this? I know you've said you're like at capacity, but the need is not filled, I'm guessing. So what needs to happen to make sure that we're wasting less and feeding people who need it more using
I think a lot of that, comes from getting, more food donors on board with us, that don't know about, the work that we do, that don't know that donating their surplus food is an option. Also getting them past, any questions or concerns about liability. I think that is still a holdup, because there are businesses that still aren't aware of the Emerson Act. So I think
tell us what that is.
The Emerson Act, that's a federal act that's been around since the mid-90s, that protects businesses that donate food in good faith. And so it's really meant to encourage food donation. And there, surprisingly, are a lot of our businesses that do not know about that act. And I think that does keep a lot of them from donating. And so that, getting that information out there in a broader way would be really incredibly helpful. Of course, we could always use, more rescuers, because, I can add more donations to the app and we can get more food donors. But if we don't have rescuers, then again, we're in we're in dire straits. And I try to cover any of our rescues that don't get claimed by a rescuer. So of course I'm concerned about it from that perspective, because I don't want any of those rescues, to go to, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm out there rescuing as well. I mean, I'm very connected, to the work that's happening on the ground. I've done every one of our rescues, at least once. So I understand exactly where our rescuers are going and challenges, that they may have, or things that we need to look out for. So, I stay very connected, to that process. And certainly receiving partners, connecting, always looking to collaborate and connect with more receiving partners and figure out how we can work together. And if there's a need for food in their area, and it's a need that they can meet by partnering with us, then we want to know about them too.
If somebody wants to get involved as a donor, as a receiver, or as a deliverer, what do they need to do?
They just need to go to our website, foodrescue.us, and register. And then I will get notified as soon as they do that. I'll reach out to them, and then we can start the conversation.
Cool. Thank you. All right. I'm just going to have us add a food rescue link to the page, to the chat, so everybody can find that. We will add those links. Any links we mentioned, we will eventually add to the comments, and also send out in an email follow up to this. Okay, so we're talking about things at very different scales, and I think the biggest kind of scale operator we have today on our call is Bill Whitley with Spurt Industries and My Green Michigan. I'm sorry, my slides are out of order with my agenda. I apologize. Let me just sleep. We'll get to John next. So we're going to talk to two composters in a row. Bill is with Spurt Industries in My Green Michigan, and has a pretty sizable operation that unfortunately I was not able to actually make it out to, but our photographer was able to go out there. So Bill, tell us, really quickly, what is Spurt Industries? What is My Green Michigan, and what do you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here today. Spurt Industries is a commercial composting operation. We're compost site operators. We are compost manufacturers. So we operate sites currently in Wixom and Rochester Hills, both in the Metro Detroit market. We will compost in excess of 200,000 cubic yards of food waste this year. And we will compost, we hope, with a good year, better than 20 million pounds of food waste this year. So we produce compost and compost amended soils that we sell back into the local market to landscapers, nurseries, garden centers. We do residential delivery. We sell to certified organic farms. This is my 10th year making compost, and we got in for the opportunity to do good work. We focus a lot, or talk a lot, about the impact that the application of compost can have on water quality across the state. And we got in it because there's a composting industry in Michigan, which is largely based on yard waste composting. And
right.
The composting industry has been around for a little bit better than 30 years, since 94, when the yard waste ban went into place. But the industry was really focused and built upon that yard waste composting. And we know that there is an equal amount of food waste out there as there is yard waste. And so we wanted to help drive that food waste composting across the state of Michigan and get that food diverted and out of the landfill. And so that's part of what drove our entry into My Green Michigan. My Green Michigan is a food scraps hauling business that is a partnership. So I'm a co-owner in that, and my partners in that own Hammond Farms Landscape Supply in Greater Lansing. Mm-hmm. And so between us, we do food scrap collection in all of southern lower Michigan. So we cover the metro markets of Detroit, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Jackson, Grand Rapids, and Kalamazoo. We have trucks on the road every day collecting food in those markets that come back to be composted either at a Spurt location or Hammond Farms, and turned into certified compost and then sold back into the local market.
And where do you pick all this food waste up from? What are your main sources or clients the hauling business?
So a number of sources, right? We service restaurants, schools, corporate cafeterias, universities, hospitals, and we also run municipal drop-off programs. So Our
Mhm.
first was in the city of
Like
Ferndale.
Ferndale, which we wrote about. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, so that was our first municipal drop-off program, and we were all a little nervous when we first did that program about what was the quality going to look like. What's really important is that at the end, can we produce good compost? And so are we going to get contaminated, or are we going to get clean food scraps on the front end? And that was the first open municipal drop-off program that we had been a part of. And so there was a little bit of trepidation when we did it. And man, has it been a great program. The food scraps that we get are clean. The residents there love it. That program oversubscribed for the number of people that it was initially going to be a beta of 400 residents. We oversubscribed it within 24 hours. We've expanded it 2 or 3 times since, and then replicated that program in other communities such as Madison Heights, Canton, Lansing, Portage, Delhi Township, and that municipal drop-off program has proved to be a very effective model that we're doing across the state.
What are some of the challenges that you're facing? And we'll ask the same question of John as well, in terms of Michigan's regulatory and market landscape for composting.
Yeah, so the regulatory environment for composters is very different in 2025 than it was in 2024 or before. The new Part 115 solid waste laws require large-scale composters to get a general permit that has to be approved by the state. Large-scale composters have to write an operations plan, a training plan, a fire plan, an odor management plan. And those are reviewed and approved by the state to make sure that operators are doing it in the right way. We at Spurt we're and are supportive of the need for those plans. We want to make sure that the people that are out there making compost are doing so responsibly and are good neighbors. But there is a lot more work that goes into being a certified registered composter now than there ever was in the past. And so the good operators won't have a problem, meeting the requirements. They are reasonable requirements. But we've battled over the years, and we fight the ghosts of bad actors of the past. People that just stack it up and let it sit. They don't manage the material. They get into odor complaints. They make a tip fee and then leave, or they dump it in a farm field and then leave. And so we battle the ghosts of the past in that. And so there's very much a NIMBY attitude around new compost locations. Not in my backyard. It's tough to get a new compost site open because everybody's worried that you're not going to do a good job. Now, those of us that have been around and have demonstrated, I think, are good neighbors and would have the ability to potentially do that. But it is tough to find land that's appropriate for composting, that the neighbors are a sufficient setback, that you don't have water or the groundwater or too close to a stream. And so the existing compost operations will need to grow to accommodate the increased volume. And by and large, most of us are willing to. We've been willing to at Spurt, and we're not alone in that at all. The are growing to try to process more material. All of us are in it to get more material diverted and then to get more compost back onto Michigan soils to grow plants in a more healthy, sustainable way.
How much would you say your business has grown since you've launched it in terms of processing food waste? Has it doubled? Has it tripled? Is the sky's the limit?
Well, when we took over, we were not taking in any food in Wixom at all, and we'll do 20 million pounds this year.
Okay, got it.
So, and we also feel, and we also know that we're just scratching the surface of what is possible in the food. We know that we collect less than 1% of food for composting in the food waste that is landfilled. Less than 1% is going into composting. So there's significant opportunity for that to increase. And with more participation in that, we will help to bridge the gap on the cost. It is currently more expensive to compost food scraps than it is to landfill it.
Right.
Most of that extra cost is in the hauling. We just don't have the density in the food scraps routes. And so the trucks that we use to collect food scraps are just as expensive as the trucks to collect garbage. But when they go out to collect garbage, they stop at every house and they stop at every business.
Right.
And when we go out, we might have to drive a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles to get from one business to another business who's willing to participate at that time. And when a trash truck has to drive 100 yards and the food waste truck has to drive 3 miles, that cost has to be covered. The trucks cost the same, the fuel costs the same, the driver costs the same. And so with increased participation, we can bring the cost closer to parity. When we look just at the cost of disposal, if you show up with a truck of food, it doesn't cost any more to bring food to Spurt than it costs to take that food to the landfill. Our tip fees are very much on par.
Mm-hmm.
The extra cost right now is in the hauling, and the more folks that we can get to join us, the more that we can do to bring that cost to closer to parity with landfill.
Got it. Is there one policy change or other kind of market change that you want to see? Is that it, just getting more businesses aware of this, or is there anything else that you'd like to see happen in the next year or two?
So, I mean, education and awareness is key. We talk to people every day that don't know we exist, that don't know that this service exists.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that there's a better thing to do with their food than put it in the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
In single stream recycling for years, we've talked about don't put your food in there, and you shouldn't. Don't put your food in single stream recycling.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that there's not a way to keep it out of the landfill. And we need more education and awareness on that. We believe that should be an education and awareness thing. We are not supporters of food waste ban policies. I've been fortunate enough to travel around the country a little bit, and I was in California recently and touring compost sites there. The ban there has not been a gift to composters. It's led to a lot of contamination coming in.
Mm.
We really look at ourselves as compost manufacturers first. We bring in food because food helps us make more and better compost.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can't produce a compost that I can sell to a certified organic farm at the end of the process, then I don't want that feedstock coming into my site at the beginning of the process. So I don't really want to push, I want to pull. And so what I mean by that is the more that we composters collectively can produce a high quality product, that we can educate the market on the benefits of the application of compost. If we look at policy around the application and use of compost, that will drive market demand for finished compost. And that will motivate people to pull more food into their businesses because we need to make more compost. And so we want businesses to want to compost. We want folks that want to compost. That's why the Ferndale program works so well, because the residents who participate really care about their food scraps being composted and care about doing it in the right way. If we just force people to do it and they don't do it because they want to, they do it because they have to, we'll end up creating more problems, and we'll create this contaminated feedstock and then a contaminated finished compost, and we won't have a place for it to go.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to go to a very different scale of composting, a lot smaller and more community oriented, which is Sanctuary Farms. And we have John Kent here today, who is one of the co-founders of that business. So thanks so much for joining us, John.
Thanks for having me, Nina. How you doing?
I'm good. Okay, I did get to come out to your spot, thankfully, and was really, really impressed with just with your like love of the compost, and putting your hands in the compost and just kind of celebrating how nice and warm and lush it is. I mean, it really is. This is the whole idea, right? We're returning all of this to the soil, to the earth. So that was fun. Tell us a little bit more about what is Sanctuary Farms and why you started this business.
Yeah, so Sanctuary Farms is all about closing the food loop. So as was expressed by many people, we want to make sure that food is not going into the landfill, right? Because that's increasing methane in our environment and making our world hotter. I just read something not too long ago that said this past year was the hottest year on record. So this work is to combat climate change, right? And it's also to create healthy soil. But to get back to closing the food loop, we also have a farm. So we want to make sure that we, have healthy soil to be able to put that into use. But we also sell our compost to, land stewards, landscapers, and agriculturalists alike. But in general, we really want to transform this culture of waste that we have as a society to really platform restoration, rehabilitation, because it is not difficult to compost. It can be an inconvenience in our culture, but it's something that is very low barrier to do.
Right. And we talked about community-led composting and really trying to close the food loop locally. What does that look like? in your neighborhood, in your community?
Yeah, well, we're constantly trying to figure that out as well, right? I think a lot of that is going to have to be a multi-dimensional effort.
Mhm.
One, policy. There's currently a community composting ordinance being pushed through by the Office of Sustainability and the CPC,
In the
City
city of Detroit. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, City of Detroit, to allow for a principal use of composting to be done in the city. Because currently, you're able to compost in two capacities. Either you're a farm, which gives us the ability to be able to compost at the like that we do,
Mhm.
or at the industrial scale, and you're held at the same standard that a trash company will be handled.
Right.
So that's just a really big disparity that exists. So we want to make sure that there's kind of an even playing field where folks can be composting in their backyard, or they can bring their compost to a local farm,
Mhm.
or just a space that just focuses on composting at a community scale,
Mhm.
which would be under 500 cubic yards, or industrial. So we want there to be, kind of equity in which people can participate in this system. So it's accessible for, all walks of life.
Got it. Um, Tell us a little bit more about what cities can do, what the city of Detroit can do, but other cities too that want to support local composters that don't necessarily want to grow huge, but want to really serve their local communities.
Yeah, okay. From an urban planning perspective, I think there needs to be an integration of food into how we design our cities.
Mm.
Particularly looking at Detroit, which has a vast amount of vacant land that can be put into productive use for composting.
Mhm.
And it has really not been something that I feel has been a priority for the city. They're in talks right now, and there's a strong push.
Mhm.
But this is something that we could have did yesterday, and a
Mhm.
lot of it does have to do, as Bill kind of spoke to, of trauma, of bad actors that have not done well.
Yeah.
I like to kind of give the analogy, if you're eating and you bite your tongue, are you not going to eat anymore? You know, we have to move forward and create a system in which is sustainable to
Mhm.
allow for healthy soil to be created, because Detroit also has a very robust community of urban agriculture, more than I would say any other city in the United States. So having a system in which people can compost allows for us to close that food loop, because right now we have the production of food, but most of the compost that is coming or being applied to the spaces within the city of Detroit is coming from outside of the city of Detroit. So I
Yeah.
think if we can create, these circular systems within cities, will create the resiliency that we need. We're coming up against huge tariffs. We're coming up against climate change, and we need to start thinking about how can we have locally grown food that's also making sure that we can produce soil and
Mhm.
in equitable fashion as well. So I think there's a lot more that can be done, but the sky's the limit.
What's next for Sanctuary Farms?
So much. So looking just from our composting lens, we are working with the DCCCP right now, which stands for Detroit Community Composting Collective Project.
Mm.
That is a consortium of many organizations like Sanctuary Farms, Sacred Spaces, Oakland Avenue Farms, Detroit Black Food Sovereignty Community Network, Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund, and oh my goodness, I'm missing one, Detroit Food Policy Council.
Got it.
So we have come together to do a pilot for community composting, looking at 100 backyard composters and then 100 community composters, basically people bringing their food waste to a local farm, 7 to be exact, to be dropped off. And a part of that will be an education, informing people of what can be composted and what can be done if you're doing in the backyard versus bringing it to a community composting site.
Mhm.
and then also bringing local farms up to scale to be able to handle that if they choose to. The biggest thing is we want to be able to use this pilot to inform policy, right? To show that this is something that can be done at scale, because 200 people will be a very small microcosm for the 700,000 citizens that we have in the city of Detroit. So this is something that we're really hoping that, well, not hoping, we know will be successful. And that is one of the endeavors that we're working on, while in the background working to acquire some M4 zone land, which is industrial zone land, to scale up our operations for trade farms.
Very cool. Well, thank you for all of that. Okay, our last panelist before we go to audience questions. And just a reminder, if you're watching online, just type your questions into the comments of the post that you're watching, and we will receive them here and we will look to answer them. But before we do that, I'm going to go to our last panelist, who is Daniel Schoonmaker with the Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. Dan's done a ton of work thinking, measuring waste streams in Michigan, coming up with policy proposals and ideas around what we should be thinking about in the state in terms of how to move all of this forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan to just tell us a little bit about the forum and what it's doing around this issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you. And again, congratulations for that wonderful series of stories you did last week.
Dan?
I learned so much reading your work this past week. As a quick introduction, our organization works with businesses, and I've been muted the past 30 seconds, haven't I?
Nope.
Oh, good. All right,
we can
cool.
hear you. Sorry, I thought we couldn't see you, but it's Bill we can't see. Sorry about that.
Well, we don't want to see Bill anyways. So our organization works with business institutions and across the state to advance climate leadership, social justice, and the creation of a circular economy. Through our membership program, we're Michigan's leading organization for beyond compliance sustainability practitioners, serving leading brands, employers, entrepreneurs, advocates, educators, and local governments. Among other things, we're an affiliate of the Climate Action Campaign. We are the regional affiliate of the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, and are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, through which we've had a quiet role in the sustainability movement, especially in West Michigan, and especially in the green building movement and materials management. Through our campaigns and advocacy, we're working with many stakeholders to advance our strategic goals, one of which is the creation of a circular and decarbonized economy. We've done a number of initiatives over the past few years to help us understand what that might look like for our organization and the state in general. Two of which I'll highlight. First, the Michigan Food System. The Michigan Food System Waste Reduction Roadmap Initiative, colloquially understood as the Michigan Food Waste Roadmap, created a plan for the state to reduce food loss and waste by half, which is the goal recommended by the My Healthy Climate Plan. That was a partnership of many organizations, and headlined by Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes Energy, who sponsored it, Make Food Not Waste, a partner of ours, and several people on this call were actually contributed to that efforts. Through that, we identified the barriers to the removal of 1.2 million tons of food loss and waste from the Michigan food system, which is approximately 50%, depending on what year and what metric you're using. And we've highlighted a series of potential solution opportunities. We've also, another thing that highlights our Michigan Municipal Solid Waste Characterization Evaluation Study, which we do that approximately every 10 years. And that's our landfill sampling. We go out and try to figure out what's actually being thrown away. And most recently, we came up with a metric that if we don't do what we should be doing in between now and 10 years from now, which is approximately the length of decarbonization goals in the My Health Climate Plan, we're going to dispose of at least $6 billion in marketable material through our municipal solid waste stream. Around 300 million of that in compost from food waste sold by the yard. And Bill's organization contributed to that study and helped us come up with some of those numbers. So when combined with that and other initiatives, we think we have a good understanding of how we can help push industry and various stakeholders towards solutions. and have launched a number of number of programs, and are in the process of launching others that we hope meet some of those goals in partnerships with stakeholders, our members, and many others, including a effort to double the amount of donated food in the food system, so to dramatically scale up food rescue. That's being supported by the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. We have an effort in partnership with a national nonprofit called Materium that's supported by Google.org and the Way Foundation to identify potential biomaterial applications for byproducts, especially from the West Michigan food system. We have a technical assistance program for food service and food manufacturing. And we also have membership and stakeholder councils for food waste and circular economy, including an advocacy framework that we're currently working on to advance recommendations to the public sphere, especially through the materials management planning committee process that's currently going on, and in the state legislature. And working to advance some things that I've talked to many people on the call about today, and look forward to seeding some ideas here with you.
Cool, great. Well, so how do we compare in Michigan to other states in the Great Lakes or across the nation? You mentioned, or Bill mentioned California and the food waste ban, and maybe that not being a good thing. What are some of the other policy levers that we could follow?
Well, so I guess we talk about how we compare to other states. It's helpful to start with kind of what's your measure of success. And so if your measure of success is the state doing things to support entrepreneurs and support the public sector, to scale up especially voluntary activities, and to build on some of the things that Bill's talking about, that whole type of environments where you're building the field and hoping and expecting them to come. I think the state's doing pretty well in comparison to its peers. We're investing a bit of money. We've have the $15 million Renew Michigan Fund, and not all of that necessarily makes its way into the industry each year, but a good portion of it does. And I think the state's doing a better job, or at least trying to get that money out there. And
that was sorry, you said the $15 million reignition fund.
Renew Michigan. Sorry if I'm
Real Michigan.
Renew Michigan. Renew and the but if we're talking about what we consider more of the push, so the regulatory environments, Michigan does trail behind some of its peers, and I think just in general regional implication we do. So like Ohio is not a very strong regulatory environment, but I think we can look at things that are happening, especially in Central and South Ohio. They're a generation ahead of what Michigan is, and just have done a much better job of seeding collaboration and bringing people to the table. And I hope that's where we'll be in the states in the not distant future. But if you look at places like Illinois, many of the coastal states, and especially California, they've taken a much stronger position from the regulatory environment. And as a result, they've seen a more rapid reduction of food loss and waste from vectors like the landfill. Now, does that challenge composters, especially composters trying to market who are trying to market a high quality product, and having all this material, that's substandard material, possibly flooding into the system? It likely does. But it comes back to, like, what's your metric? Do you want to take your food out of the landfill? Do you want to have a strong compost industry? Do you want to have some combination of both?
Hopefully both.
Yeah.
Both.
I would say if we were to cue off things like what national organizations are saying, like say ReFed, they'd probably put Michigan somewhat in the middle of the pack, but they'll also put Michigan somewhat at the bottom of the pack as far as the outcomes we're seeing in terms of like methane coming from landfills, et cetera.
Got it. You wrote a really great op-ed as part of our series. We call these columns Voices, where you outlined some specific policies that Michigan you'd like Michigan to see. Do you want to just mention a few of those, some of the more important ones?
Yeah, I'd love to. And as an introduction to that, I think if we think about what Michigan really needs to see as a circular regenerative economy, I think the thing that worked the best is a time machine, because if a lot of this conversation, we've lost generational knowledge and values about the food system, that if you don't have to go too far back to see where that existed. So we don't have strong regional food systems that have a closed loop. We don't have compost infrastructure. I mean, you didn't have waste 150 years ago. You would feed it to a pig, you would throw it in the field. I mean, that just wasn't quite a thing. We don't have the food rescue infrastructure we need, and we need to have more agency collaboration. And I think this tracks generally along with the sustainability movement in general, how to transition our industrial economy towards more regenerable and sustainable posture. And the thing we need most is a sense of urgency and support for corporate and community sustainability. Now, with that said, if we look for a couple policy levers that I'd highlight, one, we need to keep building on Part 115, the latest efforts, and especially the guidelines that were highlighted in the Renewable Energy Law, to do what we can to reduce landfill emissions. Because I think if we're going to recognize, and especially like if food waste ban isn't forthcoming in the next 5 to 10 years, that food waste is going to the landfill. Food waste is going to, like methane, is going to get out of the landfill. So we need to do what we can to make sure that we capture that methane, and if it's not going to a market, going to the market somehow, it's at least not getting into the atmosphere. From there, we kind of should work our way down. I think it'd be great to have an increased incentives for food donation. Talk about things like giving the composters some tools where if people are throwing away food and they're saying, that's like, you should be donating that. Let's help businesses being able to address their cost and inconvenience that makes them not donate it. So let's establish an incentive through perhaps a tax credit, and Michigan become the 12th or 13th state to have that, to advance that. We also need to fully fund and protect our investments in the charitable food system. So we're doing a good job right now of purchasing through the Michigan Agricultural Surplus System seconds that could be lost from farms, and we need to make sure that First of the Nation program keeps moving forward. And then beyond that, though, I could highlight a number of things. I think you put the link in kind of the list of 10 we have. We need to be preparing for a future in the same way that we're preparing for a future in which we're not using fossil fuels for our grid. Thinking about there will come a day when food waste will not go into the landfill. Now, how we get there, that can either be through a intentional and strategic and urgent investments in the creation of infrastructure and build up in Bill and John's Industries, or through other means that's maybe more politically and operationally challenging without some investment, regardless. Up to and including food-based ban.
Okay. We have some time for questions. I think we have one from the audience live, and then we have a whole bunch that were submitted beforehand. So we can this is a very general one, I think, but thank you, Valerie. How can we encourage people to waste less food, like just in your lives? Like, what do you say to people? Throwing it open.
I think there's two ways to have the conversation. There's food in your kitchen and there's food in your business. If we're talking about in the business, it's in the course of dollars. It's in the course of being a corporate citizen. Wasting food, sending it to the landfill. That's not the way to run a sustainable organization. And we shouldn't be donating food that people can eat, or we shouldn't be throwing away food that we eat. We shouldn't be sending food to the landfill if we can avoid it. And I think we need to make a business case for organizations to not do that. For kitchens, I can be honest, I don't waste a lot. That's why I'm 300 pounds. I would go back to that generational knowledge. It's like we need people to have a better appreciation for their food system, and I think just getting people to the farmers market, seeing where it comes, getting them a closer appreciation of the food, even without kind of making that case that like each year you're going to throw away $3,000 worth of food. The more you see it, the closer you are, the more you're going to appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I ditto everything that was said, but I also want to put in just the inconvenient truth of buy less. You know, we there's overproduction of things to the max, which has led us to where we are now. And if we're more responsible about what we're intaking and really what we need rather than what we want, I think we'd be having less of this conversation. And this goes antithetical to a lot of our business models, right? But we're here because this is something that is important, and I hope, kind of surpasses, the financial gains that can be made. But yeah, I think people need to be far more critical on what is being bought, and also we need a better extended producer responsibility, because if that was the case, there would not be such an overproduction.
Got it. Okay. Well, we have a few more questions. I want to try to get a couple more in. Here's one from Hans PowerNet. Can prepared food waste be composted?
Yeah, I mean, short answer, yes, right? Longer answer, check with your composter to check the feedstocks that they would like to receive.
Mm-hmm.
We, as an example, we take fruits and veggies. We also take dairy. We also take meat, bones, grease. Commercial scale can compost any type of food, prepared or unprepared, cooked or raw. The short answer is, if it was alive, it can be composted, whether that's plant or animal. So yes, it absolutely can be. And in addition to the food itself, there are also compostable products, which are processed by some composters. Check with your composter to see. We accept BPI certified compostable products as an example at our location. So you can get a plate, a cup, a fork, a knife, a straw that are all made from PLA, from cornstarch, that are fully compostable and will break down. And that can be another way to help drive diversion and help capture more food.
Cool. Anyone else want to chime in? All right, we've got this question that came in during signups that I really want to answer to, having a high school student. I'm trying to get her interested in food waste. We are signed up for a composting service now. If you're interested in doing this in your community as a high school student, where should you start? What advice would you give? Whether it's composting, whether it's upcycling, whether it's donating or delivering, or all of that.
Well, I'll jump in and say that we love to have high schoolers as food rescuers. We also love to see high schoolers get involved in, like their green club or their sustainability club at school. Something that we're working on right now is, talking to some of the schools that we already rescue food from, to find out how we can actually rescue more from those schools. And I think having the high school students really focus on their own school and how much food is being wasted in their own school is a really great, place to start. Because one, I think when we start with our kids, the last question was, how can we get people, engaged in wasting less food? And I think, I was in California. I've been in California quite a bit recently. My partner works out there in the hospitality industry, and I've seen the effects of the waste ban out there and sort of the challenges that he has as a hotel operator, also what he's seeing from his perspective. Mm-hmm. And when I go out to businesses in California and ask them if they're composting and hear about their troubles with that, and it all comes back to us. We aren't getting it. We aren't following the rules. We don't know how to, put the right thing in the right bin. And we seem like we're unwilling to learn that. But I think if we start with our kids and we show them, these kids are going to be the ones that will show us, because, they haven't been corrupted yet, like adults. And they're going to be the ones that go home and show their parents what to do, and tell them how that this is a priority and we need to be engaged in this. So I love this. And I say, high schoolers, we'd love to have you as food rescuers, come join us.
I would also encourage them to corner their principal at some time and talk to them about what their school's doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It works. We're going to do a presentation at a school next week because a student cornered the superintendent of the district.
Yes.
And they've now tracked down a little bit of funding, and so we're doing a presentation and a conversation about how we can potentially help them.
How did that student find out about it? I'm just curious. Do you know what led that student to corner the superintendent?
Well, I mean, it started with a student that found us online at My Green Michigan and emailed, and we said, hey, like, you got to get an adult involved and find somebody at your school. And so they didn't just grab a teacher. Somehow they got the connection straight to the superintendent. So we're, kind of excited about that. There are a number of schools we service already. I mean, there's a lot of food waste in schools. And a lot of cafeteria meals, and anytime you got buffet style food, you're going to end up with some waste. Certainly rescue first, right? Like, we're believers in the hierarchy. If it's still fit for human consumption, then we should get it to somebody who's hungry. And if it's fit for animal consumption, it should go there first before coming to a compost yard. But before it gets to the landfill, it should come for composting first.
And options, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but reach out. There's certainly people like us who can help, and we're not the only ones.
All right. Well, sorry.
Yes, please reach out. We're currently working to pilot with 3 schools to push forward some policy statewide to focus on where funding can come from for all schools in the state of Michigan to participate in composting. But this is starting in DPS, so if that was a student in DPS, please be sure to reach out to us at sanctuaryfarming.com.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate all of the work that you're all doing and for your time this afternoon. It's coming up on 2:01, so we'll give you the rest of your afternoon back. But thanks so much, and we will be sending out a follow-up email with all of the links that we talked about. And please, continue to keep us posted when there's new developments in all of your businesses. We'd like to continue to report on this issue and make sure that we're sharing the information with our readers. Thanks to those who watched on social, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.